Welcome back to another episode of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. This is episode 410 of this glorious show that we get to do live every Monday evening following a Cincinnati match. Unfortunately, we get to talk about another Cincinnati loss this week as they headed to Charlotte and came home empty-handed, giving up 2 goals and not scoring any. The offense looked a little anemic, if you ask most of our fan base. Our back line was challenged with some injuries and some red cards by the end of the match. And I'll just say this, we know some of our fan base is really patient and waiting to see what happens, while another portion of the FC Cincinnati fan base says the sky is falling. And so tonight we're going to talk about the match in Charlotte. We're going to talk about some fan reactions tonight, which will be a lot of fun. A little bit of talking tactics, and we'll give you a preview of FCC2 in the U.S. Open Cup and Atlanta coming to town next weekend. My name is Brian Biedenbach. I'm the host tonight, and I'm joined by a cast of characters that I don't think the 4 of us have been on screen yet together this season, so I'm excited to get into the show with the 4 of you. I'm going to jump all the way to the bottom corner if you're watching live, opposite of me. Bill Taylor, it's your first time on the show this season. I know you were with us a little bit last season. Welcome to season 10 of FC Cincinnati and Cincinnati Soccer Talk.
Yeah, it's fantastic to be here. I'm really looking forward to the show, and I'm super excited to discuss the future of FCC this year.
Yeah. So Bill, in our chat, I know when he was jumping in to say, hey, I'm going to be on the show. I'll be on the show this Monday if you can handle some truth. So I'm looking forward to some truth bombs tonight, Bill, coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, unfortunately, you might get too much truth, so we'll see how that goes tonight.
All right, we'll see. We'll be prepared for it. And Cliff, for your second time this season, I know you've been long-time listener, long-time viewer, always in the chat, and now you've been part of the show. Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you. We had the show on, what was it, Thursday with the gang, and I realized 2 things. I needed a haircut, so I got one of those, and also my brother, shout out to Andy for buying me a shirt for my birthday, and it arrived yesterday. It wasn't there for my birthday, but it came in the mail yesterday. So I'd like feedback on the shirt from the fans in the chat.
That I will give you feedback first, and I'll just say I love it. It's a great shirt. And if you're listening to the show later this week, you're missing out. Check it out on YouTube at Cincinnati Soccer Talk, and you'll see.
They can't hear my shirt?
Well, it is a little loud. But that's why I love it, Cliff. Welcome to the show, man. Glad to have you on. And Coach, here for another Monday night show, man. I love having you on every Monday night.
Yeah, I'm going to try to make myself a fixture on these Monday shows since I don't get to record any more talking tactics for now. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to dissecting some things, hopefully bringing a little bit of sanity to some pretty hot takes flying around the interwebs these days.
Yeah, that certainly was the case. And even not just the interwebs, even in our CST chat amongst us, there's a lot of disagreement and a lot of heated debates that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit tonight on the show. So stick around if you're interested in hearing a little bit of that. About halfway through the show, we're going to dive into some fan reactions. But before we get there, we want to thank our sponsor, the first half of the show here, Apollo Home. FCC is heating up, or they were. And so is the beautiful springtime weather. Apollo Home is here to help keep you CSTers cool with a $29 cooling tune-up. Make sure your AC is running at peak performance before the heat really kicks in. Schedule your tune-up today with Cincinnati's trusted home service experts. Call Apollo Home or book online at apollohome.com and stay cool all season long. Gentlemen, let's talk about this Charlotte match because, again, I said at the top of the show, if you were to believe only half of FC Cincinnati fandom, the sky is falling because of this match. And I know we talked pre-show a little bit, and not everyone even on the screen here feels that way. But let's talk a little bit about it. We come home. It's a 2-0 loss to Charlotte FC at their place. Goals by Abada and I can't ever say that name right. Ajamang, that's it. In the 48th and 51st minute. So really quick scores. We saw that a couple weeks ago against Tigres. 2 back-to-back quick goals. Just wanted to point out some of the stats real quick before we talk too much about it. And Coach, I know we had some conversation about what these stats really mean. Cincinnati had 17 to 13 shots. 17 Cincinnati, Charlotte 13. More shots on goal, Cincinnati, more corner kicks, more fouls. And we'll talk about that too. And slightly edged out Charlotte on possession. It was pretty even there. So if you were to look only at stats, you might be surprised by the outcome, which is the case, I think, in a lot of soccer matches, right? But again, if you listen to what fans are saying, none of that ever happened. Cincinnati didn't have possession. They didn't take any shots on goal. The offense was anemic. We gave up too many shots in the back. Our back line was horrible. All of that stuff. While we're there, let's start this conversation about this match with our best and worst. So as we get to talking, we would love to see it. I know some of you have been putting your best and worst there in the chat. Keep them coming. Cliff, I'm going to start with you on best and worst here of this match.
Well, for me, I think the key takeaway is there were no severe injuries. I mean, I know Hidebi's limping, and I know Miles is pulling up. There wasn't anything severe, but also to reverse your point, table flip your point. There were nice moments. We are building out of the back. We are holding possession. We're able to build up through the mid. We're just not finding the answers in the box, as Noonan said in the post match. We did see a beautiful kick. I was actually amazed at the camera angle that Apple got on Evander's free kick directly from the back, and you could see the beautiful rainbow. It just clanked off the woodwork, and who would have known if that had gone in? So I just think we're close, and I think it's understandable to be frustrated, but to say we're close after all this team has been through so far, I think is saying a lot about what the future holds.
Yeah.
My worst is, missing players next game. I think as a result, I think the Flores red, if it's not overturned, which would be a miracle, that's sour, right? That's just one more thing to lay at the feet of Noonan to deal with, along with Denke being out. It just gets harder. It's just one more thing. So that's my worst.
Yeah. You talk about the camera angle, and I thought you were going to say the camera angle on Coach Noonan when Flores got that second yellow, but we'll save that conversation for another time. Bill, I want to toss it to you. Your best and worst of this week's match.
Well, the best is unfortunately not all that much to go through. When I come down to the best, I look at minutes, playing minutes, Evander, Orejano, Denke, all on the field at one time, trying to establish some rhythm and some effort. And it was there, right? And it was there, and we're getting used to each other. Evander's recent. You mentioned it earlier on in the beginning there. Evander's a recent addition. Denke's a recent addition. Orejano is obviously the veteran, even at this point, a couple years in. But when it comes to that's really the end of my best. The worst is, once again, going to Cliff's point, it's not the number of opportunities, it's how you finish those opportunities, right? FC played a really bad 2.5-minute stretch of football. Just terrible, right? Defensively, we got caught in transition, and then we gave up the second goal with just a lackluster, no energy, which I've said before, the first 2 minutes of the game, the last, and then after a goal, those 2 minutes after are so important, and we just seem to be so flat. So I'm looking at the team as a whole. I don't know, you say don't panic, and I get it, but we're already 4 points behind Miami. We're already sitting 2 points behind the Crew. We're behind some very high quality teams in the Eastern Division, and that does concern me earlier in the season on games where we should at least come to a draw and be more competitive. I don't take anything away from that 2-0 loss. I mean, that hurt my heart, right? That hurt my soul. So I'm a little bit down, and I need to see a better result Saturday afternoon, and of course we're playing a little short, so we'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah, good takes, Bill. Coach, best and worst.
Yeah, so for my best, for all of the flack that the defense is taking, since the Charlotte game and really since the Tigres game, I will say they did a pretty darn good job of completely shutting down Wilfried Zaha. He was really frustrated all night. You saw him throwing up his hands, doing the same thing we saw back when he played in the EPL for Crystal Palace. Every time he gets breathed on, he falls over, asks for a foul, but FCC turned him over on nearly 1/3 of his touches. He only completed 2 of his 5 take-ons. He had 3 shots, but only 1 was on target. One of the shots that wasn't on target was a pretty good chance. So maybe I'm picking and choosing my moments here, but I thought they did a really good job frustrating Zaha. And so in a game that doesn't have a lot of bests, that's what I'm going to hold on to. For my worst, we've already talked about it a little bit. I'm talking about this official handing out cards for situations that I just don't understand. Obi got a card for persistent infringement. The ref did that thing where he starts pointing around the field, all the fouls that Obi has had. Guys, a pop quiz. How many fouls did Obi get called for on the night? Somebody answer.
I mean, like 3,
7,
2,
0. He did
None.
not get called for a single
None.
foul. The one foul that he got his yellow card for was a play on advantage. And it was a little bit of a late challenge. But right after that, Yedlin came through the back of somebody and wiped him out. No card for Yedlin, yet Obi gets the yellow card. Now, Obi has, I think, 3 yellow cards through 4 matches. And the one match he didn't get a yellow card in, he only played 5 minutes at the end of. Yeah. And then, of course, Gilberto Flores gets a second yellow card for maybe a tiny bit of putting his arm out at a guy. One where the official or the announcers who were loving Charlotte and hating on FCC all night, even the announcers said, I'm not even sure that was a foul, much less a yellow card. Yet it wasn't just a yellow card, it was his second yellow, which means it was not applicable to be looked at by VAR. So he gets sent off. And now you know how MLS loves to support the officials. So even if FCC appeals, the chances that it gets overturned, I think, are minimal. So, the official throwing out cards, now that's not the reason why FCC lost, not at all. Right. But it still was just one of those situations where it's like, in a game where the opponent's already up 2-0, why does this official just have to I felt like he did it with a smirk, like he was rubbing salt in FCC's wounds. Anyway, I'm going to stop.
No, I don't love when when referees will point out, I could have called that, and I could have called that, and I could have called that, like they seem to do to Obi. It reminds me, my son was playing basketball, and they're on the line, the free throw line, and they're just battling for position, right? And they're throwing elbows, and the ref looks at him and says, if you keep doing that, I'm going to call a foul. And he goes, I'm going to keep doing it until you call the foul, right? So, refs remember things that they don't call and will hold it against the player for persistent infringement.
Dude, I know what this sounds like. This sounds like every argument I've ever had with my wife. It's like she looks back in history over the 2 weeks of all the things she could have called me on, and then chooses today to call persistent infringement. And she calls it that. I don't know where I thought they got that from her. I've never heard persistent infringement other than in my house.
Can I jump back in really quick? Because Rupesh in the chat says that I say to be nice to refs. And I that is a gross mischaracterization, Rupesh. I say don't boo the refs. I don't say be nice to them. In fact, I say give them a good, oh, come on, ref. Shout at them, do the whistle. I just say don't sing curse words at them and boo them. Not because they don't deserve it, because I think they do, but because it never helps.
Not gonna help.
It either makes them worse or it stays the same and just brings a lot of negativity. So it's like, why bring negativity when you can bring positivity if you know for sure the negativity is not going to help?
But it makes me feel better when I boo the refs. So there is a little
beer tastes a
bonus
little
to that,
bit
right?
more beery, doesn't it?
It does. Yes, it does.
There is that.
The hot dog tastes a little bit better after a good boo.
There is that for sure. I'm going to jump in with my best and worst. I couldn't decide, man. I had 2 worse, and I couldn't decide. Buka's blunder, I think, was really bad, and we'll talk about that later in the show, so I don't want to talk too much about that here. But when I first saw it, I'll just say this. When I first saw it, it felt to me like he thought he was closer to the 18 than midfield, and he was heading it back to the keeper, is what it looked like. I know that's not what happened, but it looked like it was a head back to the keeper, and he realized midair, oh, shoot, I'm nowhere close. So that one was one of my worst. And then Robinson's injury, I'll just say this. Maybe there's been breaking news here since we went live. I was searching before we went. Robinson's injury early in the match, and then him walking off, kind of smiling. I saw him joking and laughing and talking with Tim Ream after the show, as U.S. men's national team teammates and whatever. The silence around that injury concerns me a little bit. Is it, he just took a knock and didn't want to play the rest of the game? That's concerning. Is it something that's a little bit more serious? They're still running tests and checking him out, and they're not saying what it is yet. That concerns me too. So I'm not sure, but wasn't really excited with our thin back line already, seeing Robinson go down with seemingly nothing serious at the time.
I pontificate on that just to assert you there.
Yes, please do.
The word came down for me. It was turf. It's like they went from a surface that was not turf, and so Miles is on turf. Raise your hand if you've played on turf or run on turf.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of eats you up, right? It kind of slows you down, and I think he was getting beat. He got beat bad in the 38th second, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that to me was the preview, and I mentioned that in my recap. He just got beat there, and it was almost a foreshadow to later, right? And I think he was like, "Hey, I could play and keep playing and get injured and feel." He did hold his leg when he went down. He was holding his left quad.
He was.
But I agree with you coming off, and he kind of was like, "Oh, okay, let's give it to Hidebe." So I have the same kind of mystery surrounding that as you do.
Yeah, but he played in Atlanta, right? He played on turf. He was one of the better defenders in the league while he was during his time in Atlanta playing on turf. So I don't know that. I don't know. The guy that is willing to give up and say, it's turf, I don't want to hang in here. If that's what it is, I'm not excited about that. But I'll jump to my best. Maybe we'll get into that more as we get into the match. I just think I'm excited that we get to see who FC Cincinnati is without this congested schedule, without this Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday game. Give the guys time to rest their bodies, to get back into routine. Give them a recovery day, give them a day to kind of get back into the flow of things, get back into regular training sessions, to travel and prepare for the next match. I think we're going to see a different Cincinnati team and a different product here in the next couple of weeks when they get back into that routine. So I'm excited about that. That's my best, that we don't have a game midweek this week. So let's talk about some of the more specifics of the match beyond our best and worst. We mentioned Ajimang, right? Cincinnati, at least early on, didn't seem to have an answer for him. He was big, he's fast, he's strong, and he kept getting by our defenders, right? So maybe Zaha wasn't, but Ajimang seemed to have a day against our defenders. Coach, what did you see for Ajimang and how we played against him?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is I think it's the first time that our center backs have really faced him because he didn't play a ton for Charlotte last year, and he is deceptively fast for how big and strong he is. And with a guy like that has that size speed combination, once you're even with him, you've already lost, because even if you can run step for step from him, you're not tackling that ball off of him unless you barely nick it like Robinson did twice, like Cliff talked about. From there, you got to get better pressure to the ball. You can't let guys be looking at your back line and looking at the holes and being like, which hole shall I play it through to my giant fast striker on this occasion, guys? Which is what was happening. There was no pressure getting to the ball, which I'm going to talk about later in our Talking Tactics segment. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. Then we got, in our chat, I know people were really looking forward to the Tim Ream, Luca Orejano matchup. Just like the Zaha, Yedlin, whatever matchup on that side, we had Orejano and Tim Ream. What did you guys think? Was it the matchup? Bill, I'll start with you. What was it, the matchup you hoped it would be, or is it a little disappointing, or did you see more from Orejano than you thought you would?
No, I personally, if you're going to look at one of the few bright spots in the match, I would say it would be his play and his pace. I mean, I enjoyed Orejano's pace. I think he won the battle. He didn't put it in the back of the net, and I was going to talk about that a little bit later. Do we have the right faces in the right places? And I know, Coach, I know you've talked about that before. Do we have the lineup? Do we have the players where they're supposed to be and where they're most effective? and I guess that's I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit later on in the broadcast here.
Yeah. Cliff, what do you think of that matchup?
I saw a couple scrums between the two, and I thought it played out as it would, but it really wasn't like the feature. I really thought Ream, and I can't remember the other defender's name at the moment, but they shut it down. They were lights out. They really, especially on the flanks. We got a couple crosses in. I remember the one across the middle from Angle to Hadebe's outstretched toe that didn't go in. But they were really lights out. It was a very good defending team.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'll say this: I put that one in the rundown because I was expecting a little bit more from Orishano. I thought Tim Ream is a great defender, but Orishano is quick. He's got that quick first step. That's all it takes to blow by you. Ream doesn't have the speed to catch him, but Ream is a smart defender, which is why he's played in the places that he's played for as long as he's played. He is a smart defender. So I saw him give Orishano space, let him run, and then just kind of step in like, okay, now's my time. I think Orishano could learn a lot from a matchup like that, playing a defender that you can beat on the dribble, you can beat on the run, except that he's a little bit smarter in his positioning and how he steps in. So I was hoping for a little bit more, but that's why I like Tim Ream as a defender. He's a smart player, good distributor of the ball once he does win it back. Some individual performances I wanted to just hit on quickly. Evander, how would you guys rate Evander's play in this particular match? Cliff,
I thought he had some good moments. I think he had a little improvised volley in the 14th minute. Cliff talked about his free kick in the 72nd minute. This is a guy who is playing the 10, and he only lost the ball on 22% of his touches. Lucho Acosta would kill for that number. Lucho barely ever dropped below 30%. And it's not like he wasn't doing anything either. He also led the team with 8 shot creating actions. Now, he's a different kind of 10 than Lucho, so he's not, getting touches in the box. He's not cooking guys 1v1. But I think that because of that, the team is still trying to work on how to get him the ball in dangerous spots. So a lot of his touches are coming, at the edge of the offensive third or in the middle third, as opposed to in dangerous spots. So I think that just this is going to work itself out because he is actually playing really well. He's just not getting the ball in the right spots yet.
Yeah. Cliff, were you going to jump in there?
Yeah, sure. I think it's, with Evander, when he gets the ball, it's not like he can't be like Joe Burrow trying to read, he can't read where the players are. It's not about and there was a transition point with Lucho where he went from reading to knowing. And that reading to knowing means things like how many times did Lucho let the ball go through or backheel something, and we all got tired of it. But it's knowing where the players are, and I feel like Evander's doing a lot of reading. Where are people? Where should I expect them to be? And that's just only going to get better with time. I am not going to fault a guy that arrived at our team going into the Motagua game. And with all the switch out we've had and the issues. So I just think he's doing lots of reading. The couple things I do have an issue with is we're at the top of the box and he seems to constantly feed the defense. Like right there, he's flicking the ball and either the pass isn't crisp or it's not at the target. And so we gave, I'd say 3 or 4 balls away that way at the top of the 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Acosta, he'd have given away, a dozen right there at the top. So,
he would run through 3 trees, right?
That's an improvement, right? So, of all the players, he's the one that I'm going to be the least critical of. I enjoyed his movement off the ball as well, taking some defenders. I think that was noticeable. And I think the minutes, right? It's just going to be more minutes. He needs more practice. He needs more minute with the first team. And I think he'll come along. I'm very happy with him. Denke we'll talk about a little bit later, but
yeah, for me, maybe I didn't know what to expect with Evander. He just looks like he's so nonchalant on the field. Like he's not putting forth the effort that I think he should. He's holding the ball. He's beating defenders, but when he beats defenders in the last couple matches, he turns it really casually, right? Really simply. It's a simple move and puts a guy on skates, right? And then he turns, he'll beat another guy, and he doesn't ever move after he beats the guy. He doesn't go to space. He doesn't take it. He looks to pass the ball off. And maybe I need to adjust my expectations of who he is, right? So Lucho, as you mentioned, would have given up a lot of passes in there, but Lucho's also taken on defenders one-on-one, getting to those spaces to do it. And I haven't seen Evander do that as much yet as I expected. So I'd like to see maybe his intensity, maybe that's the word, his intensity pick up a little bit, but maybe that's not the player he is. So that was kind of my take. I just felt like there was no urgency in his game this week. He was happy to let the game just kind of flow around him and distribute the ball as it went. The other one I want to talk about, I know we have a few more in the rundown, but I want to keep moving. The other one I want to talk about is Yuya Kubo, because he's been, the centerpiece of some, fan controversy. We love him, we hate him this whole season, right? This particular match, a lot of people were getting on his case. Let's talk about him. Who's got a hot take on Yuya Kubo? Coach?
My hot take should not be a hot take. That's why I didn't jump right in. But I guess it is in this environment. But Yuya Kubo was pretty freaking good in this match, guys. And he's been pretty good over the course of the season. And he was very good last season. He provided a constant outlet up the left. And he had so many good decisions where he would carry the ball up the left, cut it in, and then make a great pass to like Buka or Orashano or somebody kind of trailing in the middle. He finished the game with 88% passing, 3 shots, 2 of them were on target, 3 shot creating action. Now he gets a lot of flack because he will also have a moment where he tries to flick a pass with the outside of his foot to lay it off to somebody and gets it all wrong. And it looks like he literally like tried to like flick the ball up to, a Charlotte player to catch or something. Like he'll just hit the guy with it. And he has those head scratching moments where you're like, bro, what are you doing? So I get it. He is a frustrating player because of that inconsistency. But we have to also remember, in anyone's ideal world, he is not starting. But because of rotation and stuff, having a guy like Kubo as your 12th man, like your first sub or your first guy to rotate in to start, is actually a good piece in MLS. And I'm quite a fan of his. And I think overall, he's a good piece for FC Cincinnati.
One thing I like about you, Coach, is you always go to the stats. And I think that's important.
Right. You're the stats guy.
I wish we had like Chiron up in his box when he starts talking all those numbers, because I really feel like if the average fan really could just absorb those facts, they might think differently about their criticisms. You cannot, for me, you can't touch Kubo. I'm going to get that kit because that is the kit. He's, I believe, aside from Hagelin, the longest tenured player we have. I think he's been, 5-6 seasons now. He's run probably how many marathons for us? He's played how many positions? At this point, I it's not in my tendency to point at a single player anyway. It's a team sport of all sports. And so I'm not gonna down Kubo at all. But he did have a shot. He was participating. Yes, you're gonna have your moments where it goes over the bar or it's wide and things don't go well. But I really think I think it's pointless to point at Kubo right now as the issue.
Yeah, we got a comment on the screen from Rupesh that says fans don't care about stats. Bill, you want to address that?
That cracked me up, right? So I look to Coach for the stats because that's not what I'm watching when I'm watching a game, but it's a great take on those stats. It's great to have. And I think it shows what is behind Kubo as a player. The last home match against Toronto, when he finally scored, were you not like, finally? I literally stood up and said, finally. He finally put the ball on the back of the net. And that's kind of what we were waiting for down in Charlotte. We were just thinking it was a matter of time before he got a shot. His offsides mannerisms, I'm not so happy with some of his runs, his lack of awareness at times. But once again, I gotta agree with Cliff. I think Kubo's an untouchable at this point. You can't fault him for the result, especially on defense, and especially after last year filling in at every spot that he was placed into. I mean, that brings a lot of value to a squad. I mean, I don't see Denke playing defender.
Let me be clear also, because I died when Cliff called me the stats guy, because I'm not a stats guy. Like, I am an eye test guy. I go to the stats after I see all the Kubo hate, and I'm like, I thought he played pretty well.
No.
And then I go and look, like, what am I missing? And I see those stats, and I'm like, he did play pretty well. So I type those stats in my
But you do have that intuition. You do have some notion. Like, you don't immediately write them off. You're like, I bet if I go to the numbers, I'm going to see something. And for me, players are a lot like stocks in the stock market. Where are you going to put your money? If you're going to sell that guy, where are you going to put your money? Ajimong, you want to bring him on? How much is that? So it's a question there. So where are you going to put the resources devoted to Kubo to someone else, and not break the bank and still get the night after night commitment? Has he played all 90 for all of our games?
No, he's been subbed out.
Yeah.
Toward the end.
Yeah.
But he's started all games, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, last year you could count on him being subbed out in the 70th minute. He's made it longer than that this year. I think he's in better shape.
Now, a take I have seen, which I do like, is that he would be very effective off the bench. Like, if you started someone else, brought him on when legs on the opposite side are tired, that's the worst thing for that other team, right? I'm tired, and now Kubo's coming on to break my ankles. That is an effective and I would say a valid stance as well.
Yep, no doubt. And I think Kubo brings the energy, brings the speed, he brings the skill off the bench. That when he knows he's got to last 70 minutes, he paces himself a little bit. So it is good to bring him in. But at this point, the guys we have, the personnel we have, you may see Kubo starting at center back. That was a question, who's going to start center back in Atlanta? You may see Kubo out there because we need him, and he's willing to do it wherever on the field he can get on there. So I want to move to our Talking Tactics segment, because a lot of the questions that I know I had, a lot of the questions fans had to do with the back line this week. We shifted back to a back four, which means, we've talked in previous episodes that requires a little bit different responsibility from the two defensive mids that are sitting in front of the back four. Coach, I want to pass it to you to walk us through some of the tactics of the back four that maybe worked, maybe didn't work so much this week.
So for this segment, I wanted to really focus in on those two defensive center midfielders, Buka and Obi, because I think it's something simple that they don't do well, that fans, that no matter how much experience you have in soccer, you can watch for, right? So I made a couple Talking Tactics videos talking about offensive partnerships, like whether it's two strikers or two number 10s and how they work together. You read the run of your partner. I called it with forwards pinch and stretch. One guy checks two, one stretches the back line. There's a similar motion that two defensive center midfielders need to go through when they're playing, where when one moves to press the ball, the other one needs to drop and narrow, is what I'm going to call. Basically sprint back to the middle. And Obi and Buka constantly get this wrong. And it's not as big a deal when you're playing with three center backs, because you have an extra center back who's going to step into the midfield to clean up some of that space, to be in that space, to mark maybe the other team's number 10 or a winger who's come inside. But without that extra center back, you had Leo Abada and you had the other guy from Pep Biel from Charlotte dropping into that space in between the FCC back line and those defensive center midfielders and picking up the ball constantly. So what you'd have happen is like the play in the 27th minute that led to Miles having to make that last ditch tackle where he injured himself. The left back, Tim Ream, was on the ball. So Buka was pressed slightly forward and Obi was man marking another defender instead of dropping to the middle. So because Buka's not close enough to the ball to really get good pressure, Ream just looks up and passes the ball through the entire midfield into, I think at that point it was Pep Biel, who just basically plays on the half turn, which means basically opens his body up so he can see the field, and then just scoops the ball forward to Ajaman, who's running through. And Miles is forced to get in there and stretch himself to try to make it. In that case, either someone has to communicate to Buka to not step there, to drop in on Biel, and that could be Miles Robinson, it could be DeAndre Yedlin, it could be Obi, or Obi needs to drop and narrow like crazy to get into that passing lane. He doesn't even have to make it all the way back to where BL is. He just has to drop enough to affect that pass. The second goal came off of this same sort of action where Kalina actually had the ball and Buka was pressed forward as part of that FC Cincinnati press on Brandt Bronico. The ball shifted to the Charlotte right and Obi started to push forward. And at that point, because Obi's moving forward, Buka has to drop hard to the middle. He doesn't. He's lackadaisical with it. So then the ball is shifted to the right, and then they just hit a ball. It splits the entire midfield open, just wide open into Lil Abada in this case. And then Abada just turns and plays it through to Ajaman, who, again, he has a really good finish, but it's easy from there because there's so much space in the midfield. So I do think the back line, those center backs could have done better staying with Ajaman or staying a step in front of him instead of alongside of him. But when there's players like Bronico and Abada and Pep Biel receiving the ball, just like I said before, just looking at the back line and choosing what hole to pass it through, I think that is always going to be a recipe for disaster. And that was, to me, on Buka and Obi not working together in that way. One pushes forward, the other one has to drop to the middle.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that any better myself, Coach. That's a brilliant take. I'm going to be a little more critical, right? This is where the truth comes out. With those players in those positions, I can't see conceivably playing what would be considered a flat four. I just can't see it. I think you have to have, I don't want to use it, and I know I'm going to be criticized for it. I think you've got to have a sweeper in the motion to stay back. And I understand moving forward. I understand offsides. I get all of that on the stopping the offensive side. But those guys obviously did not play well together the entire, it was 3 minutes. Right? I mean, Teenage Hidebe with his sticking his leg out, Miles Robinson with the tap. I mean, there were a few moments where, this game could have gone 4-5-0 in Charlotte's favor. And we got lucky a couple of times. Now, could we have scored once or twice? Well, sure, of course. But the flat four with this personnel group, and that's what I'm talking about. Do you have the right faces in the right places? And then when we're talking about the game coming up, I can't wait to hear what you guys are going to do with the defensive four. So great job, Coach. That's really awesome observation. That was perfect.
Yeah. And so, we have, the different phases of the game, and we talk a lot about the back line here. There was a lot of talk about the attacking third and again, we led on shots, which actually surprised me when I looked at the stats. I'm a, eyeball guy too. And I looked at, Evander had a couple from 30 yards that were right at the Kalina or, 30 yards up in the stands or whatever. So maybe those count as, stats or whatever. But what is not working tactically right now with that, with in the attacking third, with that trio that we have of Orishano, Kubo, and Denke up there, that seems like it could be pretty powerful. Is it a tactical thing, or is there something else going on up there, Coach? What do you see?
I mean, I certainly think Pat Noonan hit the nail on the head a little bit when he talked about creativity and movement. But I think that is more of a symptom of the problem, which is just guys making bad decisions. There were so many bad decisions where, like, in the 8th minute, there's a recycled corner. You have all your big boys up in the box waiting for the ball to come in. The ball comes out and it's recycled back to the left to Evander, who had just taken the corner, and he's wide open. Does he cross the ball? No, he hits a shot from the edge of the box where it's like, there's no way that was going in. I mean, I could have been goalkeeper and you're not beating me there. You would have had to curl it in to the very top corner of the back post. It was such a bad angle. And there's so many.
He wasn't with us Thursday night when Cliff said, you're not going to get a ball like that past Kalina.
Exactly. And there were so many moments when I just saw, like, guys, same with Orishano, he'd come inside and he'd have Evander open to pass to in the middle. And instead he'd try to cut back to his right foot to be Ream with speed, or he'd try to curl a shot with his left foot. Just like times when you have easy passes in the final third that you try to do too much. And when you constantly try to do that, then guess what your teammates quit doing? We've seen it with Lucho Acosta. They quit making those runs because they're never getting the ball. So now you have Denke just hanging out in the middle being like, oh, Evander has it, Orishano has it. They're not crossing the ball. They're going to either shoot or lose the ball on the dribble. So he quits moving. And I'm not saying that's right. He cannot do that. He's paid lots of money to not do that. Right. But I do think that is more of a symptom. Who didn't do that? Yuya Kubo. He kept cutting the ball to the inside and making really good passes to teammates trailing the play. So,
And Coach, you talked a little bit. We don't need to talk a lot now about it because we've talked in the past about, Lucho Acosta. And I hate going back there, the way he led the press and waiting to see how, Denke was going to do that. And so far, it seems to be hanging back a lot more, not really pressing in the same way Lucho did. But I saw Kubo do that a number of times where he run past Denke and put pressure on keeper, put pressure on center back, and force something out of the back because of the press. I'm hoping that we see more of that, whether that's Kubo leading it or Denke learning, which way to go or whatever. But I thought Kubo was good in that. Again, it was defensively pressing, but being able to put pressure up there to win the ball back in the attacking third, I'd like to see more of that happen. Guys, I want to move quickly to, I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but I do want to, we've kind of hinted at some of the fan reactions, and I want to get some of your takes on some fan reactions. Are you with them? Are you, is this, ugly overreaction, or is there, something there to be concerned with? I ripped some of these straight from our CST Slack chat. So some of these came from our own guys, and I'm not going to out anybody. And some of these came from just social media posts that were public that I saw and just wanted to throw them out there. Quickly, not a whole lot of time here. Take number one is FCC should have kept Brett Halsey and dropped Yuya Kubo. Give me your response to this.
In the words of our good friend Chad Ochocinco, child, please.
I love it.
I'm all about should have kept Brett Halsey because I don't get that move. I just have to believe there's something else that we don't know about. But as if this was a 1-to-1, a black and white, like, he goes, like he gets voted off like Survivor or something. I just think that's patently ridiculous.
Yuya and Orejano are the two guys that move the most on the field, in my opinion. So that's a ridiculous statement. That's why I laugh so hard. That's crazy.
I do like the idea of Survivor there, Coach. Fans should vote for immunity at the end of the game. Who we keep, who stays on.
Man, I'd be afraid of what this team would look like if we left it up to fans voting. Even some of us, let's be honest.
I'd be playing CB with a plate of chicken wings.
Right. There you go. The second one was Noonan out. Join me. Noonan out. Right. Okay. Overreaction or cause for concern?
Absurd. Just absurd.
Nuts.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
You know what, Brian? I will say again, I've questioned 81st, 82nd minute, and I don't want to question him too much because I would like to meet the man and be on good terms. And he's evidently got just a little bit of Bobby Knight in him. So based on a certain documentary I saw, so I really, he's been through a lot. And again, game after game, there's no consistency in what he's able to put out there, and he's tried things. But no, we can question form and we can question subs at 81st, 82nd minute. But we're not down there on the field. We're not seeing the legs. And we're not reading the players. So I really have a lot of trust in Noonan.
Yeah. I will say the only other thing that you can criticize Noonan on, definitely the substitutions, but who else doesn't use a lot of guys or make a lot of subs? Wilfred Nancy, and people seem to love him. But anyway, the only other thing that you can really criticize him on, in my opinion, is those patterns in the offensive third, which are basically non-existent. Jose said, isn't that a coaching issue too, when I was talking about it? I think Noonan, by all accounts, pretty much says, I'm going to stay out of the offense, guys. It's not that hard. Keep moving the ball, look for seams, score. Basically trusted Lucho and now is trusting Evander and Denke and Oreshano to make it work. But that's a fair thing to do. There are a lot of top coaches who operate like that in the world. So you could criticize him for that. Would I like him to have to show a little more control? Sure. But then maybe you're stifling creativity. So the fact that anybody would want him out at this point, I think is just silly.
Yeah, I've got it up on the screen, but for those of you who are listening after the fact, Jose says that's industrial strength, stupid. I think he deserves criticism, but getting rid of him, that is dumb. Yeah, well said, Jose. And the last one thinks that it's interesting because one person says Lucas Engel ain't it. Another person says Engel's our best player so far this year. Wow.
Is that the same person 2 hours later?
No. Two different places I saw these, which was really interesting. Two different people, two different places. What's your take on Lucas Engel? Which one do you lean towards? He's, he ain't it, or he's been our best player this season?
Neither. I think he's somewhere in between, right? So I don't know that we know the answer to that question yet, whether he's the answer or not. Do I dislike his play? No. Do I love his play? No. I mean, he's, to me so far he's average. So we'll see what it moves forward.
Bill is 100% right on that, which is why I actually lead towards the he ain't it comment, only because I was hoping he would be better than average. I'd spent a lot of time preseason talking about how bringing in an actual left back who could do things both offensively and defensively could really help this team. And I've been so unimpressed with his play in the offensive third. There was a play towards the end of the game in like the 75th minute or something where he received the ball kind of at the top corner of the box, and he hit a cross so hard that like even the defenders were dodging it and like sailed out for a throw. And I'm like, I had no idea what he was doing. Like, did he just hit a shot really bad? Or, I mean, it was just so bad. And there were so many other bad crosses where you could tell he's trying to do that thing where you bend the ball in behind the back line for like a sweet tap in for the forward. And he just gets it wrong every time. So like, if he could make that cross, then yeah, that's the right decision. But he gets it wrong every time. And that defender is just blocking it out. And FCC at best earns a corner kick. So I'm struggling with him right now because I had high hopes. But as a league average defender, I actually think he's been fine. He defends pretty well, even if he's a bit on the slow side, and he's good in possession, even if he doesn't really affect things in the final third.
Yeah. That's an interesting one for me too, because I think, early on in the season, I would have said he's exceeding my expectations in the offensive third. Some of the balls he put across, some shots on goal he's taken, but he seems to have fallen off more and more of that. And again, maybe it's because we're asking so much of him. Cincinnati's asking so much of him running that sideline that he's not excelling in the offensive third. Like maybe he started when he had a lot of energy and he was trying to prove himself. And in the defensive third, at times he's getting beat because he's not as slow and maybe is tired at the end there. So
where was he before? Where was he before he was with us? I mean, I know he was with Middlesbrough, but was he directly, or was he on the bench? Was he sitting before he came to us?
He played a lot for Middlesbrough last season, and then this season he had like, I think, an injury, and then got replaced in the starting lineup and was getting limited minutes.
So there, right? It's like, okay, well, there's your explanation. Maybe he's not fit. Maybe he's not from it. Back from that, I've got a replaced ACL myself. I can still tell you when the tornadoes are coming. So who knows? I do feel like you see the effort, certainly. And I've seen a couple live games where he's all over the place. I think. One thing I can't stand about watching on the TV is you can't see off the ball movement as well. And that's one thing I love about sitting in my seat at TQL. You can watch not the ball, and he moves off the ball well. Baird does the same thing too. He does a lot of off the ball movement that people can't see. So I think we'll see. I honestly, I just wait for this team to be rested together on the field on a regular schedule.
But Cliff, this is no time in the show to be logical and rational. This is the time of the show to give us your hottest takes. Why you just, I'm just kidding. No, but I do. The reason I wanted to address some of this, right, is because it did feel like FC Cincinnati fandom was going crazy with Noonan out. We've got to ask a lot of questions of Chris Albright. This team's not going to be what they are. And I'm not being critical of fans. I know fans are going to be fans, and I have some of those same feelings too. I just wanted to bring it to the show tonight to talk with you guys about what are the things that we do. There are some questions that maybe we should be asking of Coach Noonan. And Coach, you mentioned it, the substitution patterns. Chris Albright's not going to hit 100% of the time. I think he's doing pretty well. I don't think his job is on the line like some seem to think it is. But Cliff, we're going to shift into some of our CST content here in just a minute, because I love your take about your Sunday morning thoughts and why you do them the way you do them. So before we get there, we want to highlight our second half sponsor show here as we near the end of our show, Beyond Exercise. It's a local physical therapy and fitness business that helps people stay active and injury-free. And in fact, they've helped some of our local MLS Next, and FCC Academy players with their health and performance needs. Check out their suite of services at gobeyondexercise.com. Guys, I want to just highlight some of our CST content, because we are a lot more than just this Monday Night Live show. Some of you listen to the show, I know, throughout the week, but we have Jersey Swap that Jeff Tebbets does. We've got a great episode coming out previewing the Atlanta match. We've got, if you listen Thursday, Christy took a trip to Monterey to watch FC Cincinnati play against Tigres. She made the broadcast. I don't know if you saw that. She talked about it and kind of went viral a little bit. She shared with us Tigres Takes, shared it on Twitter, and there's like 30,000 views at some point of her conversation about her experience down in Monterey, which was fantastic. So check that out. She vlogged the whole time. She videotaped the whole time she was there and kind of documented her experience. She's got that coming out, I believe, in a couple days. So be sure to check that out. What a cool opportunity to have one of our CSTers down in Monterey for that opportunity. So that was a cool one. Look for that. Jeff Tebbets, Jersey Swap, we talked about. We're doing Patreon live streams that, if you're over there, even on the free tier, we'd love to just hear from you and have a chat like we're having tonight on the live show. You get to ask some questions, get to know some of the folks behind CST, share some of your thoughts, and ask some questions of us and ask some questions of Coach that may show up in another Talking Tactics video segment that we have coming up really soon. If you would like to support Cincinnati Soccer Talk in all the content that we do create and produce, head over to cincinnati-soccertalk.com/support. From there, you can join our Patreon. It'll get you things like, a $5 subscription, a paid subscription, monthly, gets you into the Growler Cup, which I don't know how you guys are doing in Growler Cup this year, but it's an opportunity to pick your teams, pick your score each week with some fabulous prizes as the season goes. Guys, I want to shift now a little bit. No, Cliff, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about your Sunday morning thoughts. That was the whole transition to get here. Sunday morning thoughts. Tell us a little bit about that and why you do it the way you do.
So I've been doing that for a few years at the FC Cincinnati fan group. And you know why I do it. It's because I don't want the rest of my day, my Sunday, to be defined by what went on at the game, particularly if we lost. And so I get to that point in the moment, I get my coffee and I just think, what is carried with me? And I make it a point not to write them or do them after the game at night, but rather when I wake up in the morning, and just kind of what I take from that is it's not always about the gameplay. It's what my personal experience is and how I feel about it and what it's going to do for my day. And we're talking here now about fans and the negativity. All I have to do is think back to the fact that we were a USL team playing at Nippert, losing to teams like the Riverhounds and Indy 11. And we are so far from that. And I just remember it was the community that built that team and made that team and pushed that team. It wasn't the other way around. And I would just encourage everyone on Sunday morning, do your own Sunday morning thoughts. And you know what? My absence from that group, doing that there and doing it on Patreon, has caused others to do that. And I think it's really a healthy way to digest what went down with the game.
Yeah. So check it out. Good thoughts. Giving himself some time to digest before he puts it out there. Fantastic. Cliff, thanks for doing that. Always appreciate reading those the day after the match. Guys, I want to talk a little bit about FCC2 and the U.S. Open Cup, which I know has been another topic of controversy here on the show. But we have FCC2 playing New York Penn Cyprian on Thursday at NKU Stadium. Kickoff is at 7:30. How do we feel about the twos teams playing in the U.S. Open Cup, specifically FCC2 playing in this year's U.S. Open Cup?
I'll jump in right away and say I'm excited about it. I'm going to the game. I think it's a good chance to see these players, these younger players, in a different kind of setting, playing against a different kind of team or a different kind of professional player. Instead of just playing other kids from other teams, you get to play some of these guys that have been journeymen, maybe even in their 30s, professional players. It's kind of like when you go into play a minor league baseball team and you have those guys. Some of them are certainly young players looking to build their career, but some of them are going to be older players, grizzled veterans, if you will. So it's an important challenge.
Yeah. Bill, what do you think about FCC2?
So I love the fact that it's in Northern Kentucky. I think it just it's going to draw a little more southerly crowd. We see a lot of Kentucky license plates when we go to the FCC games. And they make the journey and they make the trip across the river. So I think it's time to, it's nice to give them a little payback and maybe draw some people from the Lexington area or a little bit north of that to come watch an FCC2 match. And I agree with Cliff. I mean, I think the exposure is great, and I think it's fantastic to watch. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of like a AAA. I guess it reminds me of a AAA ball club, right? You have some veterans dropping down due to injury. You have some other guys that have been waived that are playing, and you have these great young players coming in to start. And, maybe you get to see the next guy move on. I don't know how many guys knew that Kip Keller had gone to Minnesota. It was one of those things, right? You just don't know where these guys are going to end up and where they're going to get their minutes.
Yeah. I'm excited to see FCC2 play in this because of, everything you guys have said. I agree that playing, professional players that have kind of wandered, guys that are in teams that maybe have been MLS players, maybe played at a higher level, that are now down in USL playing against, these guys, the kids from FCC2 and some of the younger players. I think it gives them an opportunity, and it gets Cincinnati fans. Maybe it's not the same thing, but it gives Cincinnati fans who love the U.S. Open Cup an opportunity to see the U.S. Open Cup back in their backyard. Cliff, were you going to add to that?
You said the backyard. I think the thing I missed about the USL competition was sort of that backyard vibe. That it was almost a chance. The last time I saw Ledesma, Emmanuel Ledesma play was with Indy. I went down and watched him, but he didn't play because, of course, his quad was bad. But I like the fact that people who might not can't afford to be season ticket holders and get into there can take their kids and enjoy a game, the game that everybody can play at any time. And I think that's important for the sport. And I just enjoy, looking down at a page and seeing Sarasota Paradise. What are they about? That's just an interesting name. So let's go check them out. It's filled with curiosity and exploration and exposure. And I just think it's good for the game. So hopefully, and when you add the pressure of a competition and a cup, it just adds a little more heat to it. And so that draws more folks.
No doubt. In other news with FCC2, we don't have time to get into it, but I'd love to talk about it maybe sometime. Stefan Chirilla gets called up to the Romania's U18 squad. I think that's a fantastic opportunity for a young player, and I'm curious, to see the exposure that it gets him and the opportunity to play against, guys from all over the place, some of these European teams that they're up against. He's got 3 friendlies with Romania against Croatia, Turkey, and Switzerland, all within about a week's time. So you talk about this quick turnaround that FCC has faced and has played. He's gonna see it over there as well as he steps on the field in Romania's kit. Before we wrap up the show, I do want to talk briefly about Atlanta, the match that's coming up. We've talked about maybe what we're missing. Some guys out with injury. We've got some called up for Kevin Denke called up to the Togolese national team. I was trying to figure out how to say that one. We've got him out on international duty. We've got Flores out on red card suspension potentially, unless that gets overturned. And, we're keeping our fingers crossed and hopeful there, but I don't know what's going to happen there. What are we looking? How are we feeling going into this Atlanta match facing Latte Lath, who's coming in as one of the league's leading scorers with 3 goals on the season in their first 4 matches? What are we going to see this week, Coach?
Man, it's worrying because the one thing that FC Cincinnati has really struggled with, one of the things is speed, and Latte Lath is like legit fast. So if I'm Atlanta, I'm just putting balls in behind the back line, and I'm just daring the same thing that Bill talked about. Like, when are you going to drop in? Actually, I wouldn't call it a sweeper, but drop hard instead of trying to hold that line, right? Or when are you going to hold the line? And right now, FC Cincinnati holds the line a lot and gets beat over the top a lot. So with all these center backs missing, the defensive line being screwed up, maybe it'll be a good thing. Maybe you'll have Yedlin and Powell, both pretty fast players, playing center back, and maybe that'll help a bit. I don't know.
Or maybe Cliff and Yuya out there, see if they can keep up.
A couple beers and I'm good for CB. I really think one thing that's not eluding me is this is the second team in the second week in a row consecutive we're playing who barely lost to Miami on bad terms as well. That is not cool. I don't like that somebody's angry at Messi and wants to take it out on us. We're not mentioning Brooks Lennon, and I just watched that guy thread so many crosses in yesterday. He's wicked. He's almost as good as Kai, who's the guy we just played.
Wagner.
Yeah. Really good, just technical strikes. And so the combination of latte, I know what I'm having to drink in the morning, and Lennon is really awful to see. I'm going to be clear though, because we were clear at the last thing. We weren't really high on the game for Charlotte. I'm not high on this one. The reason I'm not high on this one is I'm not feeling juice in the back box. And by juice, I mean, I'm not feeling communication between the goalie and the back line and the wideouts. I'm not seeing that communication happen. And I think that's probably what continues to cause problems and why we're victimized through the back. So I'm going 0-2 loss on Saturday. Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry.
Wow.
Bill, what do you think about that?
So, Atlanta's defense is healthy again. And it showed against Miami. Did you guys watch that Messi goal?
Yes.
And that's why I want him to play. That's why I love watching him. I wish he'd play more MLS action instead of international, but that's a different story. It's going to be, I think it's great. Cliff, you bring it up. We get beat on transition, and I think Atlanta's going to slay us there. And if we can't put a ball in the back of the net, what's the difference? This whole season, it seems like we're playing 0-0 tie at half. That's what we're playing for. And then we hope something breaks loose in the second half. I'm hoping for a draw. I don't know if that's going to be 0-0 or 6-6. I don't know. But I'm hoping for a draw and that we at least come away from this with a point. And that's about as optimistic as I can be.
Yeah, one note of optimism that I would add is that, just like FCC are missing players, Atlanta are going to be missing some pretty important players too. You have Miguel Almiron, you might have heard of him. He'll be playing with Paraguay, but other starters in the midfield and the back line. You have Sean Gregerson, you have Bartosz Schließ, Luis Abram. So it's like guys that play meaningful minutes for Atlanta. Now, I still think that it's going to be, the FCC is going to be up against it because the sheer amount that they're missing in the same position. But Atlanta are actually missing more guys. So this will give FC Cincinnati a really good chance, I think, to tweak the game model, maybe try to defend a little more compactly and hit on the break, which guys like Orishano and Kubo and Santos, if he starts, should be able to do. So I do think there's the chance here to get, a 1-0 or a 2-1 smash and grab sort of win.
Bill, I didn't think about it till you just said it, that this could be one of those matches with our back line being as weak and facing Latte Lath. Maybe our offense starts clicking, and maybe this is a high scoring match potentially with the number of guys that Atlanta is missing. But I'm not counting on that. Our guys have not proven consistently to put the ball in the net, and a lot of times in a single game. We know it's possible, but we're still waiting to see that. So
you'll know in the first 5 minutes, right?
Right.
You'll know. If I'm going to sit in that seat, and if I come out and they play like they did the first half against Tigres, if they come out pressing, pushing, just storming, and if we hold the ball up top, raise your hand if you're looking forward to us getting a corner kick opportunity. I'm not, because every time we do it, we collapse back. It feels like 3 years ago. Who's back? So if we come out with that kind of energy, and maybe we will, I'm going to chalk up last week to daylight savings week and 2 games in the week alone. So one of which was at 10 o'clock in Mexico. Yeah. So maybe if we get rested, and so I'll hold open. If they come out with a lot of pop and energy out of that first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, we could pull away with it. I don't see Atlanta not scoring. That's my thing.
Yeah. If you want to hear more about the Atlanta match, Jeff Tebbetts is interviewing Jason Longshore from Soccer Down Here. Make sure you catch that episode of Jersey Swap later this week when it comes out. Jeff always does a great job interviewing opposing fans, podcasters, and the teams that we're playing. So check that out if you want to learn more about Atlanta, what they're bringing into TQL this weekend. If you want to get in touch with us, tweet at us at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Hit us up on email, feedback at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. We'd love to hear from you, your questions, your concerns. If you got questions for Coach, if you got something you'd like us to talk more about on the show, we would love to hear from you. Let's move into our final thoughts, guys, as we wrap up the show. Cliff, I'm going to start with you. Your final thoughts on tonight's show.
So I'm still feeling kind of like a guest, and I said this in the last episode, and I'll say it again because I don't think anybody will. There are dozens of people that make this show possible and put it together, and they're all extremely talented. And one of the mission objectives of CST is to give young journalists and old journalists opportunities to practice their art and advance. So I would just implore, if you're listening to this, particularly live, would you please go find a friend or an enemy and tell them about this broadcast. Get them into soccer, take them to the game with you, have them come over, give them a beer and sit down and watch the game. I think we're just called upon to be the community we were that brought this team into in existence, and that's up to you. It's not up to these four guys. It's up to you guys to build this back up and keep it going. So that's my final thought. We have a lot to treasure with this experience and this opportunity. I think we owe it to ourselves to make it happen.
Yep. Cliff, thanks for the final thought there. Good to have you on the show. 2 weeks in a row, my first time with you on here. So thanks for joining us. Glad to have you a part of it.
Glad I got a haircut.
Yeah, that too. And your loud shirt. Love it. Bill, how about your final thoughts?
Yeah, so my final thought is pretty simple. Happy St. Patrick's Day for everyone out there, given the football community. And my final thought is, guys, it's March 17th. I think there's a lot of soccer still left to play in the season. I don't think it's panic button time yet. So for the fan base out there and the All for Cincy community, just give the team some time, give them some minutes together, and hopefully we hit our stride mid-season and then go in strong at the end of the season. Unlike last year, where we definitely finished the season on a down note. You can do a lot in the playoffs if you're trending in the right direction. So there's lots of time left.
Lots of time left. Yeah. Bill, good to have you back on the show for your first time of the season. Coach, final thoughts?
For my final thought, I want to spend a minute honoring the one and only Pavel Buka, because, he had one terrible mistake in that game, and that colors the whole match for him. But like some of the people in the chat were mentioning, he's been so good this year. And actually in the Charlotte game, he was really good. He led the team with 11 progressive passes, stat guy here. He only lost the ball on 14% of his touches, which is unheard of for a guy that's moving the ball forward. There was a play just in the second minute. Cliff loves to talk about, you're going to see it in the first 5, where Miles played him in the tiniest bit of space, and he made a sweet turn, took a touch forward, and then pinged a 50-yard ball on a diagonal to Yuya Kubo running up the left right onto Kubo's foot. And it's like plays like that makes me think this is only the beginning of his second season. He's a young guy. He's only going to get better. And as Evander starts to click more with him and with the team, and as Denke, I think, gets going even more, I think you're going to see this open up for him even more. So Pavel Buka, well done. Don't worry about that mistake. Things are going to get better for you and for FC Cincinnati because of it.
Bravo take.
Definitely. Yeah. Good take, Coach. Again, always happy to do a show with you here on Monday night. So thanks for being here. My final thought, I just want to throw it back to the fans, because we had some fun with some of the fan reactions and fan comments, tonight on the show. I led the show with, the sky's falling, right? If you listen to our fan base. But I love our fan base. I love FC Cincinnati's fan base. They're passionate. They, are willing to make some ridiculous statements and ridiculous takes, and then the next week totally flip it the other way when, you come out of a tough match with a, 5-2 win or whatever it is. I love the fan base for that. And I'll say this. We have at least 2 guys. Cliff, you mentioned the expanding team here at CST. We have at least 2 guys who joined our team this year who their story is, I wasn't a soccer fan. I didn't know much about soccer. A friend invited me to the match, and I fell in love with it just because of the atmosphere at TQL. You don't fall in love with the game because you go to your first soccer match and you watch a game you don't understand. You fall in love with it because of the fans around you and the passion and the environment. So shout out to the fans. In fact, I was at the hardware store here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, the other day, and I'm getting a bunch of stuff and talking to Kyle, was his name, was the associate there. And she's asking me what I was doing, and I'm building a podcast desk, and why are you doing that? What are you doing? So I got to tell him a little bit about Cincinnati Soccer Talk. And he said, oh, my wife and I take a trip to Cincinnati every year, and we always hit up a Reds game, and we do this or do that. And I said, check out an FC Cincinnati match when you go. Go to the Reds game if you want to, but you will not be disappointed. Check out FC Cincinnati. Even if you don't know the game, the fans are great. Check out the stadium, go to the experience. So my final thought, I love our fan base. I know we had some fun with it tonight, but love you guys and all you give to the community in Cincinnati and beyond, touching me even up here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Thanks for what you do for supporting the team and growing the game in Cincinnati and beyond. Thanks for joining us tonight on Cincinnati Soccer Talk. We'll talk to you next week.
Good night.